Okay, everyone, you probably know who I've got on, because you've probably seen him walking around, and us bringing this car on. So he's a man who needs no introduction. I'll give him a little one anyway. Former Fifth Gear presenter, host of the Late Break Show, and 50% of the Smith and Sniff podcast. Jonny Smith, everybody.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Welcome to PistonHeads Annual Service. Feel free to take a seat if you'd like.
Where do you want me to go?
Do you want to come sit next to me? Otherwise, it's going to look a little strange. And we'll bring Paul on next to you. Lovely to have you here in Worcestershire. I was really hoping, admittedly, to see the Eagle Quest, because I saw it at the Goodwood Festival of Speed, and worryingly, it was the most exciting car I saw that day. But such as the cult following that some of your cars have, that's not here today, but you do have the taxi instead, right?
Yeah, so today we've brought the Jonny cab, as it's known as, the Tokyo taxi. And I didn't bring more than one car. No. I tried to bring multiple cars before. It just gets just so complicated. I don't bother.
Can I bring up the Element, or is that off limits?
No, don't bring it up.
No, right, okay.
Supposed to bring another car as well, but just... You know when cars don't go into reverse when you've just put the gearbox back in? Yeah, just stuff like that.
So no, we had that. We're graced with the taxi instead. Have you had a look around the site though? Has anything caught your eye yet?
Well, I've had a look around the this sort of courtyard area here. I've been in there to look at the caterum that's done by the RAF. Don't know if you've seen that, cool, which is a really cool project. I like that one. And I went down there to the toilet. And I won't tell you what I saw in the toilet, obviously, but saw some great cars. There's the Tolman Peugeot 205 just there. And I really like that. But I also like going out in the car park. I don't get a chance much at these shows, but the car park's always one of the best places to go. I mean, you're spoiled here, because if you go that way, you see some, beautifully curated stuff. And if you go that way, you see anything and everything.
Oh yeah, it's a real Wild West in our car park, and we have some delightful curated lawns out there. But I was kind of hoping you had walked around, because I've been on this stage all day and really haven't seen what else we've got.
Well, that Alpina's rather nice. That's behind all of the audience. That's next to the very early Skyline with the bonnet up. Oh, yeah. That's next to the yellow RX-7. Just those three. I'll take those.
It's just an absolutely delicious collection of cars.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to talk about barn finds for kind of an obvious reason, really. I kind of feel like this has become a staple of the Late Break Show. Although, correct me if I'm wrong, if it's only just a small part of it. So how did that all come about? What was it that kind of made you go from, we kind of saw a lot of kind of new reviews, we saw some interesting projects, and then the barn finds really took off. So what was the first one?
Well, the whole point of the channel was always to kind of be an umbrella for a number of things, and for an algorithm that's a bloody nightmare, because most YouTubers just fixate on one thing. They just review new cars, or they rebuild crash things, or they go on driving adventures, or whatever it might be. And I always wanted to just do a lot of everything, maybe selfishly. And so that means that 1 week I'm doing a new car review, then I'm meeting someone with a car collection, then we're doing an EV, then we're doing a project of mine, whatever it might be. So it's kind of like a wheel of fortune, but there's no fortune, because YouTube's nowhere near as lucrative as people say it is. So the barn finds was something I always wanted to do, and I think it stemmed back from being a kid and finding stuff, derelict stuff, and being a bit fascinated with it. And I did the first one before lockdown went crazy. And I did it, I filmed it myself, and it was a friend of mine that had been looking all over the country for a really rare Austin Allegro, hadn't found one, and then his neighbour, who was a recluse, spoke to him once for the first time in about 5 years, and he went, "Yeah, you like old cars, don't you? I've got an old Allegro in that shed." And honestly, it was 100 metres away from his house. and he went, "Yeah, go and have a look. It got vandalised about 10 years ago." And he said to me, it's in there. It's a one-owner car. He'd had it from new. And I filmed it, and that was the start of the barn finds, basically.
And this is what I find really kind of almost hard to fathom, is how is it that someone buys a car, uses it for a little bit, and then puts it in a garage and then forgets about it for decades. What's the kind of the story about these cars just getting neglected?
I think there's a lot. I think that the cars going into garages and never coming out again, it's never properly intentional. I think people forget about time, and there's a best intention, and then things change. And there's a lot of tragedy sometimes. I mean, the thing about the barn finds is, which I hadn't fully anticipated when we first started doing them, was how emotional it gets. There's a lot. It's not really about the car. It's actually about the people, and that, as time goes on, that's become more interesting to me. And you are dealing with quite sensitive, family issues, people passing away, all kinds of big things like that. So sometimes it takes a long time to get access to the garage. And then other times, the person who owns the car or the family that own the car, I think it dawns on them that we were only supposed to put this away for 5 years and it's 50 years. And they almost feel a bit stupid or a bit guilty. And I say, well, no, because actually sometimes if you turn a negative into a positive, that car being locked away in the drive for 30 years has saved it. And sometimes that car was locked away when it was worthless, and they decided to just push it to one side and wait for a while. And then suddenly that car's like dead rare and valuable, and it's survived. So I love the barn finds. I mean, I didn't expect them to become the most popular playlist on the show, but they are the most popular thing on the channel that we do.
Absolutely. And what's the scene usually like when you arrive? Because I've always wondered if it's a little bit like a Facebook ad of where someone says, just needs a service and it'll be fine. And the just needs a service is, it's on bricks. So is it usually like, is it sometimes they're a little undersold? So when you turn up, there's quite a bit to do.
Sometimes they're undersold. I mean, I don't ever recce the car beforehand. So I get a couple of photos now and again. So I get an idea of access, and I get an idea of whether it's missing anything. The new problem has become, does it have an alarm or an immobilizer? Because it's like Dracula being shown as crucifix to me. If I see an 80s immobilizer, I go, oh gosh, we're going to be here for hours. And I had one 2 weeks ago. And the guy totally forgotten. This was a one-owner car. I won't tell you what it is. It's a one-owner car that he'd hardly ever driven. And he'd forgotten that when it was new, he got the dealer to put an immobilizer on it. And then I got there and he went, I said, is that what I think it is? I saw a siren in the engine bay. And he went, yeah, I did it. For insurance, I have to have that fitted. And I went, oh, gosh. Okay, here we go. And 4 hours later, we managed, I think, to defeat it.
I guess it's a bit like a bomb in like a Die Hard film, of where you look at it and you've got to find a way to disarm it without it going off, because then you're just completely screwed.
Yeah, it's just like a Bruce Willis film. You're absolutely right.
Sweat pouring pouring down your face. Oh, God.
Yeah, I should turn up in a vest at some point and with no shoes or socks on and just run across some nuts and bolts and some glass. Sometimes it is that painful. A couple of people have said to me today, I love watching the barn finds because they're really relaxing. And I'm like, yeah, it's not always really like that in the moment. Sometimes you actually, the night falls and you're still trying to work out why the car won't run. And it does get frustrating. But there's other times when the car won't run immediately. It's seized or it's missing vital parts of the engine, and you just kind of go, all right, that's fine. And now we're doing more cleaning of the cars because people seem to like the kind of before and after of the car wash. And I actually really enjoy doing that because I know I can actually do that, whereas getting a car running is a little bit more of a loose term.
Because it's a whole day of work. We see just those 30 minutes kind of compressed down, but which is probably why you look so fresh-faced and happy at the beginning, and then slightly distressed by the end if something hasn't gone quite to plan. But yeah. What's been the most uplifting story that you've had so far, of where it's kind of the car has really just been kind of a small part of it? It's getting it out of the garage has meant a lot to either yourself or the owner.
Well, there was one where there was a lady who lived in a beautiful part of mid Wales, and she lost her husband about 18 months previous, and I think he died prematurely. And she had two cars. She had a Triumph TR6 and a 911 Porsche from about 1977, and that had been in her late husband's family for a long, long time. And she'd come to the realization that she should sell it, which I was surprised about, but she was selling it because her nephew, who was there on the day, couldn't get on the housing ladder. And so she decided to make this big decision to sell the 911 to give him the money to buy his first house. And it was really quite emotional. And she wanted me to get this car running, and I felt so pressurized to get the damn thing running, and I didn't actually get it running. But it was a beautiful car. And by the time we wheeled it out and cleaned it, and we had a really close look round it, and she kept asking me to buy it. And I don't need any encouragement to buy cars, but it was like, it's a 911, it's not like $2,000. So I didn't buy it, but thought about it a lot afterwards. But she was so pleased that we'd got it out, we'd turned up, and this was going to start the ball rolling. And I said to her, I'll help you sell it, like find the right owner. And she subsequently found the right owner, and it's gone for good money. And the owner's really invested in it, and she's got the money for her nephew. But that was quite emotional. And I did actually get another car running for a family who'd had it in the family from new. Again, the dad had passed away, and that was a Escort Mexico. And it took me all damn day to get that car running. But when it ran really nicely, and I was so pleased because the lady whose husband had died, she was like jumping for joy. And so you do forget that these cars around us, they're not just colourful boxes. They can sometimes be heirlooms, and they're carriers of memories. Even like rubbish cars, that's what I say. Even cars that aren't exotic, they're still really, really quite special in their own way.
It's a bit like the Festival of the Unexceptional. I know it's a different event to this one, but there's a lot of cars there that don't necessarily kind of appeal to us, but it's got such a die-hard following to it. What that kind of leads me on to, though, is you must get inundated with barn find requests of someone going, I've got this, you've got to come and check it out. What percentage of them are people who say, I've got one of the first 8,000 Fiat Multiplers that was produced, and it's completely wrecked?
We get a lot coming in now. In the earlier days, I would have to go out and find them. Now there's a lot coming in, which is great. I'd say, though, I don't know, like 70% of them are good. It's quite a high percentage of cars that are worth filming. I just wish there was more. I wish I could clone myself, because then I could do many more, because there's just not enough to get round to. But we get some ones come in, and the person starts the email with, this might not be special enough for you, and then you read down and you go, it's an Aston Martin DB4. Yeah. Like, I bet you'll get another one of this person going, this is the most special car you'll ever film, and you'll read down, it's like, it's a base model Ford Focus. Yeah. And nothing wrong with a base model Ford Focus, and you'll go, okay. But yeah, the mix is all over the place. In fact, I was talking to a guy today who I'm going to do his uncle's car, and it's a first generation Mini Cooper, and it's been in a real barn for 4 decades. I can't wait to film that one.
So a proper barn find.
A proper barn find of a real Cooper, yeah.
And on that note, shall we address the 356 shaped elephant in the room? Because this is a barn find, believe it or not. Should we bring Paul, the owner, on to come and talk a bit more about it?
Let's bring Paul Irv on, please. Can we give him a round of applause? Because this car is incredible. And, this is a 1955 Porsche Speedster. So, all the Porsche GT cars you see here. Take a seat, Paul.
Come join us.
All the cars you see around here that are Porsche GT cars, this is like the godfather, really. This is a seriously rare car. But when I found out about this car, and sadly I didn't pull it out of the barn, I wish I could say I did, but I didn't. And you didn't either, actually, Paul, did you?
No.
No.
I wish I did.
But so Paul's background, if you look him up on Instagram, Irv's Restos, mostly specialise in Volkswagen, vintage Volkswagen stuff. But this is obviously like a holy grail car.
Yeah, to be honest. I wish I did find it, but I didn't. Someone else got lucky enough, but it was a genuine barn find where it had been left in a barn from 1963 until 3 years ago. 63?
Yeah. So it's a 55 car. Yeah. So it was so young when it got put away?
Yeah, it was on the road for the first 8 years. The story goes, we got the full backstory, and it was put away in 63 because the husband wanted to go road racing with the car, but the wife said no. So the guy took the engine out of the car and said, well, no one's using it. And it sat in the barn from 63 onwards. It went through 2 hurricanes. The barn blew away once. The car was still there. I've actually got all the pictures documenting all this. It's a crazy story, but it's true. So the car was found in the barn with the engine still next to it on a pallet with the wheels off it. And this is the second barn that has been built again.
Because of the hurricane.
Because of the hurricane.
It's not even the heaviest car in the world. I'm surprised
crazy.
the hurricane didn't take it.
Absolutely crazy. Even the remains of the roof was still on it. That's the second-hand hood cover that's on the car.
Right.
But the one that was on was the same colour, but just knackered.
I was getting a bit worried because it was clearly don't have a projector here. And Jonny, you sent over some pictures of this car the other day and said to me, it is up and running, you know, it's moving. So I thought, if it's been restored, maybe it won't look like a proper barn find. But in those pictures, you might have seen them on our Instagram, the car looks pretty much identical to as it. Yeah. It's just running now, isn't it? It is as is.
The underside of the car's been fully gone through, so it's mechanically spot on. Well, as good as it can be for what it is. But the top half of the car is original. It's had some bits of metal let in by a place in America that got it back on the road for the previous owner. But they've no paint on it or anything. It was just they let the metal in with a little bit of lead over it, and that's it. It's basically the full outside of the car is as it is. And it had floor pans fitted underneath, but it was remarkably solid, really. And then obviously all new bushes, bearings, brakes. The gearbox and the engine were both stripped down. It is the original gearbox, the original engine. It's all matching numbers. Every panel on the car's got the original stamps from Porsche, exactly how they're supposed to be. It's very authentic. And the guy I got the car from said the only thing that actually changed in the engine was the piston rings. And when you look in there, they have detailed the engine, but you can see every screw, all the rubbers, they're all perished and worn out, but that's all original.
People often ask me, like, what's your dream barn find if you could find anything? And I said, well, basically it's that. If I could have found that and pulled it out of that barn,
yeah.
I mean, it is an astonishing thing. So they started the Speedster production in 54?
Yeah. They only made a few in 54.
Yeah.
And the majority of it's a Pre-A Speedster, so they only made a Pre-A Speedster for 54 and 55.
Yeah.
The majority of them, they only made 1,200 of them.
Is that all?
Yeah, and I think 1,000 of them were in 55. This car's 100 digits away from James Dean's Pre-A as well. So
really?
It's quite a close number. It was probably in the factory at the same time.
So for me, the Speedster is synonymous with either James Dean before the 550 Spider that he sadly died in, or the film Point Break.
Yeah.
It depends who you are. But the black one in Point Break, which I'm sure wasn't an original Speedster, but maybe it was, I still don't know.
I like the one that was in Top Gun.
Oh, yeah, of course, Top Gun.
Kelly McGillis.
Oh, yeah, so Top Gun, Point Break.
I think that was a copy.
Yeah, it must have been. But yeah, this is not a copy. Someone did come up to me this morning and thought it was a vinyl wrap on a on a kit. And I said, no, this is the real deal. This is worth more than houses.
It's crazy what it's worth. You know?
It is.
And I'm not a rich person. It just happened that I managed to wheel and deal and do a few trades to manage to get myself into this car.
You told me you had to sell like 10 cars
it's a bit of a
really
deal.
quickly to afford this.
It was a miracle that I pulled it off, to be honest. But yeah, we got there in the end.
I mean, I don't know if... I mean, these were built... The Speedster model, the whole idea was lighter, simpler. It was almost a kind of homologation racing car at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's what the guy who owned the car wanted to do with it. I mean, it's done 60,000 miles, but they were all done in the first few years of its life, which is bananas. And it left the factory. They didn't make them in silver. They were made in white, black, or red. This car was white. We don't know when it was painted silver, but in the first few years, I would love to know that bit, but unfortunately we don't know that part of the history. But it was painted silver fairly early on, and it obviously looks original now, so yeah. It looks cool.
Well, it looks amazing, and if you do go onto Instagram, check out the PistonHeads handle and the Late Break Show, because we'll put the pictures of what it looked like when it was in the barn and then pulled out of the barn, because it really is the ultimate barn find, I think.
So how did it go from being in a barn to being in your garage / driveway / road outside your house?
Right. So basically, there's a French guy lives in Bordeaux in France. He wanted an original Speedster. So there's a company called European Collectibles, which are based in California. They have got a name for finding original cars. They found pretty much all the original paint Speedsters that I've ever seen, and coupes, Gullwing Mercedes, some real rare stuff. So the French guy, Arnold, who I bought the car from, he emailed European Collectibles 5 years ago and said, I want a Survivor Speedster. Can you get me one? And I think a year or 2 years later, they got in touch with him and said, we found this car, sent him the pictures, and then Arnold did the deal with the owners through European Collectibles. They then sent the car to a pair of old guys in America who resurrected it to being where it is now. And then it was shipped to France. When it got shipped to Bordeaux, they actually lost the car in the container.
What?
Yeah, for 4 months. And he thought he'd lost his car.
4 months?
4 months. And then all of a sudden the shipping company said, we found the container, thank God. So he thought he'd lost his car.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind if they lose a container full of like cheap Halloween outfits or something, but like not an original paint Speedster.
Honestly, it's crazy, isn't it? So the fella ends up with the car in Bordeaux, and he didn't have it too long, and he's got a real nice car collection, this guy. And all of a sudden, I saw the car on a Porsche Volkswagen website for sale, and it just said Porsche Speedster offers. That was it. So I emailed him, sort of, how much do you want for the car? And he replied with, if you need to ask the price, you can't afford it. And I was like,
brilliant.
Oh,
It's
okay.
really helpful.
So I just left it at that, thinking I probably can't afford it. So I just left it be.
Is that how you emailed him back? You're absolutely right.
Well,
I can't afford it.
That's pretty much it. So I stewed on it for another week, and then we emailed him again and said, look, you must have some idea. And backwards and forwards, and he told me a figure that was daft, but I could sell some cars to buy it. And that was where I wanted to know. I thought, if I can sell enough vehicles, I can buy this car. Or is it £1 million, which I can't afford? Yeah. Then he come back with a realistic price. So he wouldn't accept an offer. He wouldn't accept a deposit, an offer. It was all, you've got to come to my house and do the deal. Very old school. So I didn't have the money, though. This was a tricky bit, because I was like...
I've been there with
know
car
that feeling,
sales where you're desperate to buy it, and you just haven't got any money.
I was like, well, shall I come to the house and we'll do the deal? But I can't really do the deal because I can't afford it anyway. So I was like, I don't know how to make this work. So I just sold my cars anyway, which took me a month, and it was still, he still had the car. So I drove all the way to Bordeaux in France with my recovery truck. And I went with my son, and we were like, all the way there, I said, I don't know if we're going to end up owning this car, because it was so hard work to deal with. It'd take a week to reply to a basic email, it was that bad. And then I got there, and he met me on the street. We ended up doing the deal. And as soon as the money had transferred, obviously it was mine. And I put the pictures online of coming home with the car, and some people who follow me contacted me straight away. One guy in particular in Belgium, and said, how did you manage to buy that car? I emailed him 10 times without a reply. And I said, I know where you're coming from.
And you said, well, the secret is you've got to buy a car that you don't have the money for. And then it all just comes together.
It was just one of them, yeah. We just sort of managed to pull it off. A bit of luck, really, I suppose.
Well, you've owned a lot of rare Volkswagens.
Yeah, I've still got a few. A few less now. I've got this.
Well, I'm not surprised. But you are actually going to use it. It is a road legal car.
Oh, yeah, it's fully UK registered now as of last week. I've been just knocking around in it locally on trade plates and stuff, so I finally got the reg, so yeah, I'll drive it and enjoy it. In Cumbria, in the rain.
Should we go and take a quick look round it? Because I'd love to know kind of what your plans are for the future. Because at the moment, as we've been saying, this is pretty much as it came out the barn. Obviously, it's running, but is the plan to keep it in this barn fine look?
Absolutely. I think out of all the ones that are left now surviving, 95% of them are restored. There's probably, I don't want to say the number, but probably less than 10 original paint Pre-A Speedsters in the world. There's not many. So to restore it would be sacrilege, really.
Because the interior, I'm guessing these are new seats.
Seats have been recovered. They are the original frames. Door cards are original. It's just the seats, and to be honest, they're too new, but I'm going to have to age them.
You were talking to me just before we came on stage, saying, I've got to find out a way of aging the seats.
They do. They look wrong.
My brother has aged seats in a Bentley before, and I kid you not, what he did is he wrapped sandpaper around his trousers of different grits. And I've seen him do this, and he gets in and out of a vintage Bentley in the same way for several hours.
So he gently polishes the seats.
And it wears the certain edges of the seat to look like 70 years of wear, but with just sandpaper on his trousers. and it's leather, the same. So I can recommend sandpaper on the trousers if that's your thing.
I'll try that.
Absolute top tip for aging leather.
I've like rubbed oil into them and all sorts of stuff.
You've rubbed oil into it?
Yeah, I've been trying all sorts to try and make them look a bit more weathered, but it hasn't really worked.
The
you can
problem,
see a few stains.
There's a bit of like a handprint over there by the look of it.
Yeah, I just use it to go backwards and forwards to work in, and I'm always dirty because I work in the garage. So,
what condition's the roof in?
The roof's all right. Yeah, it's good. It's just it's an old hood, but it's not torn or anything.
It's the simplest mechanism, isn't it?
Yeah.
It even makes MX-5s look complicated.
It's an older roof that's a bit faded, but
you were saying before about any 356 or Speedster, they don't look right with the roof up. You have to just
really
have
peculiar. It looks like the car's been squashed by a big giant.
Yeah.
It's a really strange looking thing.
Yeah, I need an adult to help me with this.
Like pop that.
Oh, there we go.
It's kind of like that.
Kind of like that.
And they obviously don't have wind down windows. You just have plastic pockets that slide in on the side because the roof is a total afterthought.
So you know when you're buying an RS car, a GT Porsche now, and it has little loops for the door handles and stuff like that. You know, token lightweight stuff. That's not real lightweight. Lightweight is actually no windows.
Do away with the glass
or paint. Just take everything off.
But I still, to me, I mean, I think the 356 is still a masterclass in simple design. It's so simple, the shape, but the silhouette is so iconic. And those inboard wheels, which I know some people think it looks comical.
Looks brilliant, though, doesn't it?
Sort of over-bodied and under-wheeled, like an early E-Type, the same idea. But I just think it looks mega. When it was coming up that ramp there, and you could just see it with its little inboard tyres. What are they, like 135s?
Yeah, they're a 155, I think they are.
Just incredibly thin. But as you mentioned before we came on, these were obviously raced in period on those tyres.
Oh, these were built to race.
Unbelievably thin.
Yeah, these were built to race.
Absolutely flat out on the track in America.
Yeah.
Really going for it.
Yeah.
With all the best drivers, just with a little tiny roll bar.
So what is left to do on it then, Paul? Is this pretty much
Let's put the top back because it looks prettier with the rock.
This is the bit that's had the repairs down the front edge of the wings. Yep. And that's you can just see it's been leaded in. I might blend that piece of metal on both sides, but that is it. If I do it, I don't know because it kind of shows its history, but that's the only thing that bugs me. And the seats are too new.
The difficulty you've got is the 356 was a one-piece body. So it's like you can't just take a bit off, repair it and put it back on again. That doesn't happen, does it?
We could cleverly sort of paint blend that area, I think, but I'm not overbothered. It'll just stay as it is, I think.
I would urge you to have a close look at this when it comes off stage and it goes back over to the stand there, because it's just, I mean, just the steering wheel, the weathering on the steering wheel is wonderful. You must be so chuffed.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm chuffed to just stand by it.
I drove all the way back from France. It was on the truck. I just kept looking at it all the way home.
Yeah.
I thought, what a car.
Yeah.
But mechanically, everything else is kind of sorted on it. Obviously, you drove it here.
It pops out of second gear when you're decelerating. You have to hold the gear stick. So I might fix the gearbox in winter. Well,
you might. Yeah.
It's something that's annoying me because you forget sometimes and it just pops out. So I've got to fix
I forget sometimes and it pops out.
Story of my life.
Yeah. It's always on the deceleration. Always. Yeah.
Yeah, the anticlimax.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, on the anticlimax note, it's been
anti-lag.
The anti-lag.
Anti-lag. That's what I was trying to say.
That's what you were talking about.
That's what I meant.
It's been a real pleasure having you both on. And Jonny, thank you so much for coming with us today. And thank you as well for bringing on your beautiful 356 Speedster. I wish we had a little bit longer, but as you say, head over to the Late Break Show stand. It's literally just behind the stage to get a closer look. Ask Paul some questions. But ladies and gentlemen.
Say thanks to Paul for bringing it, because I'm just glad he did. So, and thank you for coming.
And a big thanks to Jonny.